recording. So, okay, welcome to a special episode of Building Site, where we'll just be talking about our own home system, and I'll explain what that is, which is built on site, which is built on XTDB. Alright, so I've created a little document. Was going to do a little presentation, sort of a reveal.js thing, but here we are, Will. So, over the last few months, I've just noticed that a lot of what we do is in the company is the same as any other companies. We capture information from people. We've had Steve, I think, sending a survey out about what aspects of events people enjoy. Catherine wanting to know what equipment you own. Joe wanting to schedule volunteers for Safari calls, and we're constantly kind of coming up with these little requirements to capture information. And we could use email and Slack or Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, spreadsheets, and a whole host of other solutions. And in fact, that's what every other company today kind of uses, because any company that gets to a certain size or scale of bureaucracy ends up not being able to do information technology anymore. They kind of, their systems are brittle and they work. And so anything that's done around the fringes is people working in spreadsheets. I've had people sending me spreadsheets in a bank full of kind of like to fill out and to send back. And so people do make do, but technology and IT especially isn't flexible enough so that these other things step in. But they themselves are, raise questions if they're not centralizing information. Often that information leaks out into, what happens to a SurveyMonkey, what happens to the information that's captured with it. So home is a sort of built as a business operating system. It's that's a geeky term for a company management system, but you can think of XTDB as being our reagent atom right at the center of the company, and site is this operating system's I/O bus. Okay, it talks HTTP, it talks GraphQL, it does the I/O. And I think that, think of that analogy. I've got a few design goals. I just want to frame the conversation, to explain some of my principles here, because I think it's very important to kind of understand what the goals are. We're not trying to create a kind of all singing, all dancing system. We would like to empower users, the sorts of users that feel the immediate need of needing to capture information and are often the domain owners, and they understand the domain. We want to get back to users developing, extending and be able to customize functionality rather than leaning all the time on developers. But that's not to say that we don't want developers to be able to create beautiful reactive experiences. And so what we're trying to do is a little bit of both. We've got GraphQL there for people to write those lovely rich UIs, so that you can access all the data in the system through GraphQL and through an API. But I'm going to just touch upon building how we would actually go about capturing some information. Okay, so I've got a how-to which is online, so you can see this. But the problem with this how-to is that it doesn't render very well, because I'm still rendering these documents. In fact, if you see any of these documents and you put a question mark debug, you'll see how they're built up. All the documents in Home are based on this document graph model, where every single, down to the paragraph and down to the individual field, is an XT entity, and these XT entities are all composed in a graph, and the document itself is this just huge tree. And that's kind of how everything works. If you do debug, you'll see the template model for the document, and it's one big tree. Okay, so I'm going to load up. I think I've got another browser here. So hang on, I'll get. Docs, how to capture data, here we are. Okay, so I'm going to explain how we can configure home to capture some more information. So the first thing that we do is we define the type. Now the type is held in our system in a schema, and I've got a schema for home which is alphabetically ordered by types. So the type that I want to put in here is called external identity. I want to capture people's GitHub and Keybase details. A lot of the time when you're on board, we need to know some of your Slack ID and other things that are associated with other websites. Might be optionally your Twitter account. So this is useful. So we're going to add a new kind of data type, but it's just really an example. So here I would start putting it in here. So I'm going to copy and paste this guy here. I haven't done this actually. I kind of hacked around my laptop today, so I wrote the document and I did sort of test it, but I don't expect this demo to work at all. It's not very well rehearsed. So anyway, there's our external entity. So we'll capture everything in XT has an ID. I'm going to say that we're capturing a person's identity somewhere, so that that person, everyone in Juxt, has a Juxt code, which is a 3-letter code. The issuer is the authority of the other identity, the other username, which could be GitHub or Keybase. And then, so we want to capture that. And this type enables us to capture identities all over the place. And then I've got optionally the notes. Now, whether something's required or not in GraphQL, we use this exclamation mark, this bang, to mean required. Okay. So what I want to do is, I'll go to my, I want to deploy the schema. So if we go into home, where I've got the home project, and then I'm going to go into, we have a sort of full deployment script here, which is a sort of horrible bash script. But the thing I want to redeploy now is this file that I've changed. That's uploaded. So now if I go to my local instance of site, of home, I want to look at the GraphQL console. I can look, actually, it says here, I can click on a link, which is here. And now I can see, if we search for this new type, external identity, it's now part of the system. Okay, so that's the type. The next part is, well, we've got to create some data. We've got to create some instances of that type. And we stay with GraphQL for this. We're going to create a mutation. Now the mutations happen to be in a type called mutation. So you have to find that. Let's find that. There it is. And these are all the other mutations that have been defined. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call it upsert because it's for inserting and updating. So I'm going to upsert an external entity. Okay. Now there's this big site directive here. What this means is that for this identity, it's going to generate us a UUID, a random UUID, and it's going to have this path prefix. Base URI here is going to be replaced with localhost in my case, because I'm working on my local machine. And then we'll say we need to have the Juxt code, the issuer, the username, and optionally some notes. And then this little mutation here, this little directive here is needed. This is running through Alex's code, and this is what we call the kind of the GraphQL namespace, which is a namespace that is a sort of DSL for all of the things that you can do with this site directive. And it's a little bit subject to experiment and lots of people hacking on it. So eventually we will kind of surface and try and tease out and refactor it and document it. But for now it's quite experimental. Okay, So I've created my mutation. I can now redeploy the schema. I've got to remember to do that. And now I can go back to my GraphQL endpoint, which is here, and I can press mutation, and then it kind of gives you a nice. So I'm going to give it a JOX code of mal. We'll give it an issuer of GitHub, and finally a username. My username on GitHub is Malcolm Sparks. And then after that, we'll just say, can you give me the ID? I can return other things if I need to. All right, so that has returned us an entity.
Your face in the way. You might want to move your face to the bottom right.
Oh, yeah. I've got to.
That's, yeah, okay.
Okay, now that entity does exist in the database. I can show it because I've logged in. I'm using my REPL. I can copy and paste it. Oh, gosh, it's not making it very easy for copying and pasting. I can copy and paste this, and I can use, in the REPL we have an E function that allows me to find and pull the details of any entity in the system, and every entity in sight is a URL. It's a string, but it's a URL. Okay, and we should be able to, can't at the moment, but we should be able to go to that in a browser, and if we have the permission, we'll be able to see this piece of information. Okay, so we've got data into via GraphQL into the database. Okay, tested mutation, and okay, so far so good. But the next thing that we want to do is, that's all very well, we've got all these identities that we can now create, but we want to join them to the user that they're part of, and that's really the heart of what we're doing. We're creating a graph, and that's where it really isn't like other systems. This is a really key part of it. So the way I'm going to do that is I'll just demonstrate this thing called a staff record. So I can do a query, staff record, and I can say JOX code mal, and now I can get all sorts of things about mal. I can get the JOX code, I can get even, the name, should be me. This is the sort of the magic of GraphQL. I can choose the sort of things that I want to get, and then I can get my address, I can get holidays, and this is the idea that this really becomes this central hub of information, of all company information that we build apps on. So it's this authoritative, central database. Again, I've sort of shown how I can do this all without writing any code. Okay, but we don't want to know that. We want there magically to be a thing called GitHub here, and to be able to see Mal's GitHub ID. So the way that we can do that is to go back to the schema, and we'll find that staff record. It will be type staff record. Here it is. And here's where it's defined. And at the bottom here we'll say we would really like to have the GitHub ID as a string. Okay. Now we have to teach site how to go about getting that piece of information, and we can do that with this one I did before. We can have a look. So here we've got an XTDB query, written in a sort of pseudo GraphQL format. It's not perfect because we have to do things like if we want to mention a keyword, we have to wrap it in this map. I don't think this syntax will survive, but there we are. And you can see what we're doing is joining on this jux code, and so the object here is the staff record, and the staff record has, in fact we can go and have a look at Mel's staff record if we can just say, give me the ID. It doesn't know about GitHub yet. So I can take the staff record and I can look at it in the REPL, and you'll see bits of information about it, but that the jux code is in jux.home jux code, and we tend to use, for keywords, we tend to use our own namespaces so that they don't clash with other keywords. So let's go back here. We've got the issuer. I've hard-coded this to be http github.com. That's a clause, so we only want the GitHub identity. We need it to be the external identity. This is a piece of this is an attribute that we get for free by using the mutation. I'll show you how that works. That's here. This is this thing. So this prevents us from getting anything else like a holiday. And then finally, and this is something I just snuck in this afternoon, that I realized that you needed to both, once we found this object, which is the external identity, I want to just sneak out its username, because that's the string. I could have created a type called GitHub and had that return, a username, and that would have been fine, and I would have to make GitHub. I just didn't want to do that. Okay, so now we've done that, let's redeploy, and then we're going to refresh our GraphQL. So now we should be able to query staff record, jux code. Now we want to get, the GitHub. Oh, there it is. There we are. So now we not only have jux code and holidays and stuff, we also know Malcolm's GitHub ID. And that's all we needed to do. Just a way of getting data into the database in entities, in maps, and then using XT to join those maps together. I mean, that's really the heart of Site. Okay, a little bit more is that we've got this idea of storing, well, I should point out, we could stop here and we could start building in TypeScript. We could generate some TypeScript types and we could start building an application on top of just this GraphQL interface. Now I want to demonstrate how I'm building some old style HTML using templating, but the idea is that this home system supports both approaches. Okay, I'm not being opinionated about which approach is the right one. It really depends on your context. So I have two main stored queries here. This is the one for documents. So I'll open up this one. So you can see if you look at this document, which is the home page, we have a number of things that are common to every page. We have the person logged in, we have the tabs that the person's allowed to see, some footer information, things that are common. So what I've done is that coded those into a thing called common page fields. This is called a fragment. I think that's defined right down at the bottom. So we get the sidebar, the subject, and we can also access the query parameters of the page, which is useful, and also whether the one is called debug. That's kind of handy. This is, for example, the big query that is able to build up the whole document. But I want to show another page, which is the stored query, which I'm calling domain. So this is the domain query, and this is the thing that allows me to get my profile. So I've created a thing called get profile, and this takes a parameter, a variable called juxcode, which I've defined down here. So I can get the information for me. I don't need this extra information here, so we'll take that out. And then if I change this variable to Alex, I can get the information for Alex. Alex hasn't put his address in, so it's nil, and that's fine. Okay, so why is this? This is useful for a couple of reasons. One is that templating, you're often using JSON trees in your navigating down JSON trees as template models. So this is a useful way of quickly defining a pre-canned query that you want to run over and over again. And the second thing that is quite useful for is the thing I'm going to show off, which is the Open API interface. So let me demonstrate that. So also, if we go to there's Open API interfaces, which are this kind of Swagger interfaces which are built into Site. Site has its own internal one, and here's one that I've uploaded, which I'm beginning to create. And this one has, let's have a look at this juxcode profile. So here I can do the same sort of thing. I can try it out. I can put a juxcode in. I can get the information as JSON, so this would be useful for maybe a more traditional REST client, and I can get the information as HTML, and execute that, and we get HTML. So I just want to show you the source code for this Open API. So that's under Open API, and it's in Eden format at the moment, but it's converted to JSON on the client but by the site tool before it's uploaded. So this is really a JSON that allows us to put comments and don't have to worry about commas. So let's analyze this get function. This is the get method of the juxcode profile. Now you can see here I can type in now profile and get, this is the HTML version of the profile. In fact, it isn't that one, that's an old one. This one is rooted at /home, which will eventually go to /home profile. You can see this is my profile in, it's the same as page as if I go click here, or if I'm on the home page I can click view profile. Okay, and you can do things on this. You can sort of edit your, like if I want to change my country to live in Wales, I can do that. And I want to kind of explain how this works, and perhaps if we have time at the end we can add a form to allow you to update your GitHub information. Okay, so let's have a quick look at how this works. So here we have the name of the GraphQL query resource, which is the thing that looks like this. Domain, it's this one. This is where getProfile exists, and we've already tested getProfile. This is the operation ID, getProfile, which default we can put our own one in, but this will default to the Open API operation ID. So the Open API operation ID will default to the GraphQL operation name. And then we can say for JSON, we don't have to say any more, just declare that JSON is available, and we'll get the result of the GraphQL. If we want to be a bit more with HTML, there's a few more variables that we need, because of course we get something, how does it know to produce this layout? Well, it does it because we say, well, and use this template. This template is being preloaded into the machine under here. I've got, this is the document model, and it's just sitting there ready to be rendered. You can see it's a template because it has these curly braces. Okay, and that's all it needs. There might be one day the ability to support different dialects. Only Selma is available at the moment, But that is how it's put together on that side. Finally, we need to work out how do we update information. So let's have a look at this profile page. So I store it in a, the idea is that this page here will be something that users can add and edit. It will be there might be a slate editor behind every single one of these paragraphs, and allows you to build up your own documents, edit policy information statements, and even add your own forms. But right now, this document belongs in source code control as an ASCII doc file, and I have a little ingester that takes the ASCII doc, which I'll show you now. This is the ASCII doc. Now we're looking for profile. And this is it. So if I make a change here, I can say at the top, hello, this is a change. Then I go back to my profile. Then I've made a change. I've got something running in the background that is doing the ingestion. Okay, so we want to have a look at this profile address form. How does this work? So we describe here what the address is for. Now, I'm a bit of a fan of putting forms in documents rather than dialog boxes. I think that the tendency for people to write forms in these ugly dialogues comes back from the days of Windows computers with dialog boxes where you had to fill out. There wasn't any space to describe what each field was. There might be a help system or a manual that you could read, but essentially most screens on computers didn't have the ability to show text. So we got in the habit of just having just the fields without any explanation. In the modern world, I think you need to, whenever you're asking for information, you need to explain what the information is for, how you're going to process it, and what consent you need to process it, how long you're going to keep it for. All those sort of things are really important, and I think those that therefore forms should belong in documents. So here we have a document. We write a little. We say this is a form that is going to be called details. I'm going to debug this so that we can see. If we have a look at, there'll be a form down here. Let me inspect. Here we are. There's the form, and you can see it says details, and that's that's because that says details there. Okay, and it's closed. That means that we can then put these different inputs, and we could describe it just as they are in HTML, and we can align them to the form, and then when we click on the submit button, it's going to submit this form, so all of the inputs will go together. Now, importantly, if we look at if we do the submit now, set that back to England, and we look at the network, you can see that the form has been sent as a normal web form, but it's sent to the default URL, which is doing a post. So let's go back to our Open API and have a look down here. We'll see this is the post handler. And again, we're calling an operation ID, but this time is the operation ID or operation name of a mutation that exists in GraphQL. It's a operation which we've already defined in domain, so we can find that one. update staff member address. So it takes, these are the things it contains, and juxtacode is also necessary because we need to say whose address are we updating, and this comes through courtesy of a path parameter that we've already defined in here, or we could bring in query parameters. So those are the union of all those things is brought together, and then we just send it to the mutation by this post handler. This is how it works, and we get the updated address. Okay, so I would show you how we could write one for the identity. So let's have a look at this is the identity. So let's have a little link to profile. We'll call it identity. There's no page for that yet. I could say your GitHub, so your GitHub identity. Let's call that GitHub. GitHub ID is, and that would be staff record, our new GitHub. And now the reason that's not showing is because we haven't yet defined, that we haven't mutated the query that's behind this page, which is called get profile. So we'll take, it's important, just because we've got the schema for it, we're not actually asking for this information, and this is partly of GraphQL's economy of reducing the amount of information that you get. So I'll just pull out that was the domain GraphQL, and we'll find get profile, and here we'll just, it was here, we'll call it GitHub, and I'll deploy that now. We have domain.graphql, it's this one here. So now the query has got the GitHub in, the GitHub arrives there. Now in order to edit it, that's much the same thing. We've got a missing page, so it's missing because it doesn't, there's no open API for it. So let's create one for that. I'm just going to rip the address one, and we'll call this GitHub. We'll take the same parameter as we already have, it's still the same, still in the same profile. That's we might as well just have the same information behind this page, and we'll call that profile GitHub. Now I'm going to need to create a page for that. So this is where I would hopefully go in and click a new page button, and I could do it directly from the site itself. Don't have one of those at the moment, so I'm going to steal this one. You can call it your GitHub ID. We use your GitHub ID to identify you when logging into our systems with your via auth2. We might also use your GitHub to notify you via GitHub. If we want to do kind of pull requests and that sort of thing. Okay, and then we can say this is the current GitHub, so that can go here. We'll call that the GitHub ID, and that will be, we'll just call that GitHub maybe. Well, details will do. Get rid of those. We'll keep the submit button. So what that will be doing now, if I Now, go back here. Should be able to say profile GitHub. Oh, I haven't deployed the Open API, so let's do that. So now this is your GitHub ID. That's good. So let me change this to, I don't know, Arminsert is a good name. So what's going to happen when I do that? It's going to call this post here. So that hasn't been changed. So I need to create a mutation that is going to update the GitHub ID. We haven't created that one yet. So you need to go back to creating a mutation for that. We already did create something. What was? If we go back to, hang on, go back to this one. Upsert external identity. It was that one. Okay. So let's have that. We'll need the JOX code. We need the issuer, and we'll need the username. So we're going to have to create an operation that will call that. Now our operations are defined here, but we haven't got one that will do the GitHub here. So let me create one of those. It will be a little bit like this: update staff member address, won't it? But we'll call it update GitHub. The form it will get, it's going to be called GitHub, so we'll call that, that'll be a string, and that's all we need. And the mutation will be what do we call the mutation? Upsert external. So that's the mutation that we need to call. It needs the JOX code, which will come in as a variable. It will need the username that will come through the variable GitHub. It will need the issuer that will be I think it's called constant. Can't remember. I think I can say that that has to be a constant. I might have to look that one up in a minute. I will just look that one up. I do apologise. I haven't rehearsed this demo. So this is this glorious namespace that has all of the bits and pieces on. So we have, I think there's one called constant. Ah, yeah. I have to call it. This is called a special one called site resolver and constant. I think that's what we do.
You've got an extra X in external.
Oh, thank you.
Also, that's not a site resolver directive. That's a site directive with a key of resolve. Site resolver.
Thank you. Yeah. So. Okay. So this is going to. I think it's.
No.
There's resolver. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then constant is the value.
Yeah. And then. Then it was. Oh, the value is constant. I can't remember how to use the. Okay, so
Well, what does the resolver function do?
it calls this one.
Constant.
Oh, it says value. So you say value. You say the argument value of.
Yeah, you need an arg called value. Yeah.
Oh, I need it here. It would be value http github.com.
And you've got a bracket there, a stray curly bracket. And that's your string constant.
There's a string constant, and then I don't need that one. I think that works. That's going to say, okay, get me the argument value, and that will become the issuer. Don't want these ones, and I don't need to return anything really. And we can test it out. Was that what we needed to do an upset? We need a jux code, notes, username, issuer. So that might work. So let's put that domain, and we'll try loading up that domain. Oh, there's an error. That's because it's failed to parse it, because there's an error somewhere. Probably at line 105.
Shouldn't you get an error back when you put GraphQL?
Yes, you absolutely should. And
Because you do if you do put asset or put resource or whatever, the way I'm doing it in.
This has got to be a string, I think. Oh my goodness.
No, I don't think you need to have value in the issuer. I think you can just have it as a separate argument, can't you? Or not?
Yeah, I can't see.
Because your code there was getting it out of the arg values, which is all of them.
Yeah.
I also don't know what you're trying to do, really. I don't get what this is.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You're trying to have an argument that's a constant, that's always hard-coded to something?
Yeah, I was, but I can't remember how. So let's just, yeah, sorry. We should provide that as we'll edit that bit out of the video, because I completely run out of concentration. So there we are. Issue needs to come in as a string. Yeah, you're quite, thanks, that's.
Okay, yeah, I
Okay.
thought.
And we're going to put it in as a hidden into that. We're going to send it through anyway. But having got this update GitHub as a mutation, I will put it in there, and I will. It's still coming up.
Yeah, you know you can have an equal sign and then a constant value in GraphQL if you want to.
I know you can do default value. Yeah. Field update, not update external entity. Is that because it's not been part of the scheme? Update external.
Did you call it upsert?
Oh, I call it upsert, didn't I? And you're quite right about the fact that it would be much better if the GraphQL was compiled at this stage rather than when it was first tried, and that is definitely a flaw.
You don't have this problem when you're using like the GraphQL code gen tools, like I am in insert client name here, because that does the compiling for you and checks it against a schema. So you just have your domain.graphql and you edit it, and you get like a hot reloading watcher that will say errors if there are some, because it compares it against the schema as you change it.
Right. Yeah. So now it's back. So now I've got an upsert external identity. I've got an update GitHub. I can now open this up, and I should be able to go to my update GitHub here. And if I've given it the JOX code, I can say, this has got to be JSON, so GitHub, I can put arm insert, issue it. This is the thing that we'll github.com, and then I put my cursor on update GitHub, and it's updated.
We can't see any of it. Can you put your camera in the bottom right? Because there's nothing in the bottom right. That's not the bottom right.
I can try to move myself over here. Oh, is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So let's just check that worked. So this is my GitHub. I'm logged in. Yes, it has worked. I can sort of show here your GitHub is now arm insert. So the mutation works. The operation update GitHub works. So now I need to stick that into my Open API with it's called update GitHub, and it's got the JOX code from the parameter. It's got the GitHub from the form, and it needs the issuer now. And that the issuer can be a hidden, and we can write it in here actually. Issuer is https github.com. I think that this will work. So let's go back to edit the GitHub ID. Let's put it back to Malcolm Sparks. And I'm going to click on here because I don't, it didn't quite work there. I'm posting, the issue has gone in, the GitHub has gone in, and I probably didn't update the redeploy the Open API, so let's do that. Okay, so back, let's change it back to Malcolm Sparks. Oh, that's hit an error. Operation not found, update GitHub ID, because we called it update GitHub, because I didn't save. So, hit back. No, it still hasn't worked. Clicking this post, it's got those two pieces of information in, and it should also get the JOX code. The JOX code goes into that needs to go in. And then the username is, this is GitHub, so that has gone in there. Oh, so that's set to arm insert. Let's put it back to Malcolm Sparks. Oh, it seems not to have done the update. Well, okay. Well, we're kind of out of time.
Well, what's the response? Can you not see the response?
Well, when we see, we've got to see what does it look like when we do my profile. So let's go back to get profile. What does get profile look like if we get profile if we add GitHub here? It's still arm insert.
Yeah, but when you made the mutation, what was the response?
Oh, okay. We can
in the browser tab. You don't get it.
Don't see it. get those two.
This is a very good advert for XHR requests, Malcolm.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's only let's,
If only there was some sort of script that could run in the browser.
I'm just trying to. This is.
Do you get headers back in that post
Yeah, in the post you
with
do.
with the site thing?
We've got a site resource there. If you click on that to debug it, just isn't. I don't think it failed. Well, it might have failed.
What happens if the GraphQL response has errors in it?
Yeah, then you get them. You get them in the error page. It does show you the error page. Yeah, this just gave a 303.
So, ooh, right. Because if you run the mutation from the GraphQL, it works, right? So it must just be.
The problem is it's probably. We just need to check this. Yeah, the does. The GitHub comes in from. This is the name of the right. The GitHub comes in there. So that's. I just wondered if I'd somehow mislabeled
You need
it.
the JUX code, right?
The JUX code comes in implicitly. Yeah, you need the JUX. It's got the issuer and the GitHub. That's what. Those are the two.
So you have some server side thing that actually does the mutation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing that isn't working.
It doesn't have any logs. I guess you need some logs around that then,
Yeah.
because.
Yeah, I mean, I only sort of built this last night, and I haven't really gone about thinking about it. But I was keen to show Ashwin because I wanted him to be able to build a sort of passport details screen similar to this. I guess he'll find the same issues. But
Yeah.
Still, yeah, I'll stop streaming now, and I'll stop recording.